Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today, and welcome to our Build Your Career webinar series. My name is Michelle Fawn. I manage our education and professional certification products and service here at the IEEE Computer Society. Each month, we will be hosting webinars on vital business skills that will help you excel throughout your career. Topics covered include communications and presentation skills, interview tips, personal branding, effective writing, tips to improve your outside-the-box thinking, and more. Before we get started, I would like to address some housekeeping tasks. The recording of this webinar has started. You can ask any questions in the Q&A panel. Our speaker, Elsa, will answer as many questions as she can following her presentation. In a few days, you will receive an email with instructions to access both the presentation slides and recording on demand. Today's webinar is on the online presenter. This workshop will explain the fundamentals of public presentation and details the critical difference between live, in-person, and online presentation. We will take lessons from the world's top experts on becoming more efficient and influent online presenter. Joining us today is Elsa Velasco-Paul, co-founder and creator of the M&E Group, a marketing and consulting firm based in Tulsa, Oklahoma since 1997. Elsa also served as the international CX manager of the global company, the Crosby Group. She also trains corporations both in person and in webinars format on many different subjects such as persuasive communication, design thinking, branding, leadership, and continuous improvement process. Elsa, with that being said, thank you for presenting today. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Michelle. Welcome, everybody. In the time it takes me to finish this sentence, more than 40,000 presentations will be made across the world. And we're talking about PowerPoint presentations only. It's estimated that more than 50 million PowerPoint presentations are created every day. That's crazy. That means that the market for presentations is extremely crowded. The good news for us, that not all of them are that good. In today's session, we're going to teach you the essentials of what makes an online presentation a truly outstanding one. Hi, everyone. I'm Elsa Velasco-Paul with the M&E Group. Like Michelle said, we're broadcasting today from Tulsa, Oklahoma, and I am thrilled to be here again with all of you. In this session, we're going to go from the rationale for having online presentations because we always want to know why are we doing what we're doing. We're going to talk about the types of online presentations, the key elements for great execution, and we're going to top it off with the top 7 tips for best online presentations, especially during these COVID times. Today's presentation is a dip in the water to what's possible to presenting online. This is our passion. It's to help our clients in everything that has to do with content curation, speaking, other critical components, everything that threads, that ties it all together in what you're going to hear today. But before we go any further, I want to know about you guys. I want to know who's here today. Let's do a quick poll. And what I want to know is, I want you to check and figure out where are you, what stage are you in your career? I want to know, are you a student? Are you a team leader? Are you in the C-suite? Where's my retired friends? And to do this, Michelle, if you could help me, let's drop down the poll question. And how about 30 seconds for you to select where do you fit in this category? And once we're done, we'll go back and check the results. So if you don't mind, click your selection. And in 30 seconds or more, Michelle will show us the results.
I will switch it right now.
Okay.
Here you go.
Wonderful. Excellent. Okay, let's see. What do we have here? Wonderful, wonderful. Ooh, wonderful. Oh, yay! Look at the happy group down here. Good to have you guys here. I love that. I love that. Okay, this is a wonderful, wonderful mix because we have the folks that have been through it. Welcome, folks. I love having my C-suite folks here, the managers, the supervisors, the team leads, the entry level. This is perfect. PhD candidates, thank you so much for joining us. And my students, this is the perfect time for you guys to join and to learn everything that we need to learn. So with this, now that we know exactly how I can stage this better for you, we need to take care of everything, and we need to start from the top. Yeah, you guessed it. We need to start with the legal part, and that, my friends, is the disclaimer. And you guessed it. What this is, it's just a humorous attempt on our side just to, to talk about and say that if you do need to use our material, just contact us. Let us know, because more times than not, we will work with you and we will be more than happy to facilitate the information. But please reach out to us and we'll be happy to share the information. Talking about presentations. Do we really need online presentations? I think that's a good question. Well, sometimes we don't. The thing is that we don't ask that question often. Some meetings, in reality, are better if they become detailed emails or even a memo. The reality is that nobody wants to be held hostage by an unnecessary online meeting. With more people now working from home, many of us are being asked to take on tasks and to use some of these technologies with some of us only have passing familiarity. So some are now being asked to lead a team meeting, for example, or to present online rather than doing in the meeting room. Even if we weren't asked to do this because of COVID times, the reality is the trends, the efficiencies, and frankly, the speed of life in itself is pointing that more online is what's going to happen. Online presentations give people a really phenomenal level playing field. Hear me out. On an online presentation, everybody can see perfectly, right? The second thing is everybody can hear well. And potentially, everybody has the ability to feel a little bit less intimidated because you can't see those around you. There's also the fact that sharing documents is much easier. Even sharing ideas, you can put it on the chat and you don't have to be concerned that if you raise your hand, somebody's going to make a comment. On the downside, online presentations can cause strain to the viewer because what we don't have is that interface, you looking at the face or anchoring ourselves to a human face. Up to 90% of how we communicate is through nonverbal cues, for example, like facial expressions. Infants, they stare twice as long at simplified human faces rather than shapes. We are wired for other humans. Online platforms, unless they are working with a video, they don't have that. Now, an unnecessary online meeting can also be extremely, extremely expensive. If you don't take into consideration, for example, all the tech costs, a standard online meeting between you, coworkers, and maybe two of your bosses can be, maybe $250, regardless of if this meeting was necessary or not. Now, let's be fair. Contrast that to the cost of traveling, lodging, taxes, food, to just conduct the same business. And clearly, you can still see that the numbers still point to online meetings being a little bit better. What we really want to go, or at the bottom of all this, is that we don't want to be in the group of the 250 million. I'm sorry, 250 what? Yeah, 250 million is the cost of time wasted per day via ineffective PowerPoint meetings. Yeah, The COVID-related estimation nowadays is that 60% of that 250 million is all online. Yeah, guys, that is all us. Yikes, that's a terrifying number. So let's talk then of what types of meetings do we want to really talk about. Well, the basics is that we want to talk about two groups of meetings. The most common mistake that we're going to encounter when we're designing for a big online presentation is that we go and run and collect all this data that we need, and we start putting it together on the PowerPoint. And I'm just using PowerPoint because it's the most common that is out there, but there's many others. And we put it in a semi-sequential order, and we start and get busy with it. The problem with this approach is that we're designing for something before we've figured out, before we've designed what's the purpose of what we're working on. This is like putting together the horses and putting the cart in front of it. What we have here is an overview of several types of informational presentations. When we talk about push meetings, we're talking about meetings that have the information and they put it in front of the viewer, and the viewer is to consume it. When we talk about pull meetings, then we're talking about meetings where we want something from the viewer. Think about the ones where we want the viewer to raise the hand, to go for a call to action, to do something right there. Let's start with the first one, for example. The instructional is a very good example of a push meeting. The instructional is the one that gives specific directions or orders. Think of the academic ones. This presentation is going to be a little bit longer because it has a lot to cover. Maybe it's technical, sorry, and the listeners is going to come away, for example, with a new knowledge or a new skill. Usually it explains the new information, and the audience already knows what they're going to come out with. It's going to connect also this learning with an actual use. The second one, the arousing, is going to connect a little bit of the push and a smidge of the pull, because in this case, it wants people to start thinking about a certain problem or a situation, but I'm still putting the information in front of you. What you want is you want to arouse the audience's emotion and the intellect so that they will be receptive to my point of view. So I start using vivid language, and I want an arousing presentation. In these cases, I use a story. And sometimes I try to exaggerate a little bit the problem. And I think you guys, your creative juices are going. You've probably seen these types of presentations where people get a little bit carried away. And I'm trying to describe the solution that I want my audience to go with as a satisfactory resolution. I always, for these, I want to have a call to action that obviously goes around what I am offering as a solution. The third one, the decision-making, is a little bit heavier on the push for one reason, because here I have a lot of data. The purpose of this one is I want to move my audience to take the suggested action. And instead of having a lot of the emotion involved, I have my ideas, my suggestions in my arguments. In this case, I want to show the need to solve the problem the way that I see it. So I'm going to describe the solution to bring a satisfactory resolution to the problem. The key way is I usually compare and contrast the two worlds or the two problems with the problem solved and unsolved. I want to present my case, for example, the way that I see would be solved best. If we check then, for example, for the next group, the informative is quite interesting because the informative looks a little bit like the instructional, but it has a softer component because the informative, let's call it in a nicer way, it's a little bit shallow. And don't repeat this, but hear me out why. Because this one, it just goes to the surfacey of certain levels. For example, if you want to talk about time, and time explains when things should happen. So this works perfectly with visual people, the people who wants to see the overall organization. place. This explains when things or where things are going to happen. So this is great for people who want to understand the group or the area that you're talking about. So you can use regions 1, 2, 3, the visual map, for example. Or cause and effect is another group of informative presentations. This one is going to explain how things should happen. So this is perfect for people who love to understand relationships between events. There's another perfect favorite of mine, which is the logical order one. And this one explains the list of items in the order of importance, but it's very, very good for people who are very used to breaking down complex data into components that people can digest and do something with it. The last one, the persuasive, is the one that convinces the listener to accept my proposal. So it can be very similar to the arousing. The difference is that I want to first capture my audience's attention, and that I want the audience to understand that the service that I provide is going to not only satisfy, but that there is behind a ton of logic and evidence that demonstrates that so. So whereas the arousing goes with a lot of the story and a lot of the emotion, the persuasive not heavily goes only with the emotion, it heavily goes with the data and ties with a little bit of the story to make you have enough buy-in to go with this. Why do we need to know all these kinds of informations? Well, because you need to know what's your target. This is your goal. You can't design a presentation if you don't know what is your target. Now that we know this, let's talk about the key elements of a good online presentation. It's very simple. It's 3. And when I talk about 3, a lot of people tell me that, hey, you misspelled the first one. Not really. The first one is context. And when we mean context is because the content has to be written within the context of where it's based. For example, one of the misses that some of us may make when designing online presentations is that we design and we write for something that doesn't connect with the audience. If you have a wonderful presentation, but you do not take into consideration the time, the situation, or the circumstances around when you're going to present it, it can be a huge mess. The other one, of course, you understand, this is about design. And design is all about being simple enough to be elegant, to understanding the rules of design. And yes, before you start getting a little bit antsy, I did add a primer of design elements in the next couple of slides. And of course, when we talk about delivery, this is so important and unfortunately gets so passed over in every single one of these webinars that we've added a little bit of formulas or tried and true tips at the end of this session, because I believe that delivery is one of those that can be very easily solved and that people just don't know how. And that is something that I can absolutely help you with. So now that we understand how and what we need to focus on, who am I competing against in these online presentations? That is a good question. Well, now that we think about it, online presentations are really efficient. We've already set that precedent. We know that. They're very cost-effective. Audio people, visual people love it. So yes, all learning types are there. Okay, what's there to miss? Oh, yeah, I think it's us. It's ourselves. It's what we are doing that we're not supposed to be doing because we're not in front of people. I'm going to do a quick test with you guys. Michelle, would you mind helping me with this one?
Sure.
We're going to do a quick poll. And what I want to do is guess what other people are doing during an online presentation. And you're going to be surprised to see the results on this one. And this is a poll that has been done, frankly, every year for the last 10 years by a lot of the biggest organizations in the world, research organizations, because they want to know what possibly could people be doing besides paying attention to, frankly, important information, important enough to be pulling a lot of these resources. Back 10 years ago, to do an online presentation was extremely expensive. Nowadays, not so much, but still the costs are inherent. Michelle, do you want to give, what do you say, 20 more seconds?
What do you mean about, sure.
Okay, so by the end of that, we'll look, and then I will tell you what some of the research shows of what else people are doing during an online presentation.
Here are the results.
You guys are spot on. Perfect. Yes, yes, yes. Okay, I just... Oh, nobody went with the mustache. Okay, perfect. Actually, in this research, there was a lot of people that, interesting enough, they were taking other calls. So that to me was outstanding. There was a lot of online shopping. Oh, I love you. The exercises, good for you. There wasn't a lot of that. Playing video games was very high. Checking social media is always extremely high. Going to the restroom, interesting. Very bold choice, eating or making food. And absolutely other work. We absolutely believe that we can multitask. And whereas you and I agree on this, some of the latest and greatest research still says that we do not multitask. We think we do, but we're really not that good at it. The reality is that in this case, us Americans, we swipe our phones on average every 90 seconds. It's a habit. It's almost an addiction. Well, in that case, you and I, we're not going to be able to fix that. So let's pass on that one. Another reason why people multitask, well, people multitask out of boredom. Well, you know what? That one, I can help you with that one. Let me show you. Let me show you how we can go from idea to wrap up and increase our chances of delivering outstanding presentations online. And the first thing, like we said it when we were talking about the key elements, is we need to understand where we're starting from. What's the big idea, or what we call, what's the vision? The vision is we know why. We start with why. For example, if this is a given topic, or like if you have a weekly report that you do, don't just stay with giving the weekly report and just repeating the data over and over. Go deeper and find out, why are you talking about this report? Or even better, instead of just talking about the report, find out what is the reason why you are reporting on this. For example, why don't you want to report about the number of issues from last week, and what does it mean? What we want to know is, how does this tie? Is there a trend inside of these numbers? What are we going to do about it? Better yet, do you have any good ideas of how this can be shared? And is there something that you're bringing to the table from last week about it? Once we have this vision, I love to keep what I call a virtual sticky note. And I actually keep a physical sticky note next to my desk as I'm designing it, because we always want to keep what we call, avoid scope creep. As you start designing, you get excited, and then you start going in a different direction. And that's embedded in design. We want to keep an eye on my end goal, and to do that, I do an outline and I start typing up my script. Lots of people, they do their script at the end. I love to have my outline and start scripting out great sentences or great ideas, because those are the ones that stick in the end. The simplifying is just another way to verifying that there's no redundancies. And this is a good way for you to find out if something can be simplified. Does it have purpose on its own? If you have an image, a word, or something on your slide that is absolutely necessary by itself, then it stays. If it is just complementing something else, it needs to go. Always assume questions. The first thing that I remembered up to this date, and I'm going to date myself, was back in the early 90s when I made a fabulous presentation back when the PepsiCo was going through the route going down to Brazil, and I assumed that I had it down to a system. They made a question that I really thought they wouldn't even go there because it was a pretty complicated question. Of course they went there because this was a high level meeting. Assume this: the higher the level, the more strategic the question. So prepare. And the good thing is, questions are going to force you to validate your data. Also, be clear, be efficient, and purposeful. If you can't hit those three, then you need to start cleaning up your information. I love to provide engagement times, and to do that, I write them in my outline. Engagement times is what I call stretching your virtual legs. You know, it's the polls that we did at the beginning. It's those times that I ask you these rhetorical questions, because this keeps you engaged, but it also keeps you thinking. And I want this as a partnership, not me just pushing information to you until you cry mercy, if that makes sense. So I did promise you that I was going to offer you something. But before we go, remember about delivery? The whole range of strategies for delivery is quite extensive. And we're going to devote a couple of the next slides to unfold the segment in a much more detailed manner. But on a general level, I think the ones that I personally want to highlight are two. The first one, absolutely stay accurate. Even when you get excited, when you're engaged, please avoid anecdotal reporting when you're in a business setting. Anecdotal reporting is the typical, there's been a lot of quality issues in the last month. When you're putting somebody else's reputation on the line and you say something like that, your authority and possibly a relationship went out the window. If you have something like that, a statement like that, you better have data. And that data better be said right then and there. And with that always comes respect. And by respect, I mean be respectful of time, others people's time and yours, the format, whatever format. If they've given you a template, use it. Don't get creative if they told you to use a certain format. Language, the certain type of language that they're using. And also the meeting purpose. If the meeting, they've given you 5 minutes, do not go over the 5 minutes. The first time, for example, that you call a meeting with the C-suites and you decide to read them, your slides, you know what? It's also going to be your last. A good way is calculate the cost of your presentation, of your online meeting. If it's a push meeting, like you're just giving them a report, do a quick calculation. Do an hourly rate of each required attendee, and then add it all up to the cost per minute. How expensive is this presentation? And then are they getting the return on investment? That's how you know if your material is worth it or not. And one of my favorites that is often overlooked is the post section. The post section is such a shame to miss because this is where we learn, and this is frankly where we celebrate. This is where we can review the video, learn what we did, celebrate what we did well. And you know what? We thank all the people that have supported us. For example, in this case, thank you, Scott. Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, IEEE Computer Society. It's always wonderful to work with you guys. Now, I did promise you a formula, didn't I? Here it goes. Formula time. Okay, what does this all mean? Hear me out. There is such thing as a formula for perfect online presentations. When I talk about formula there's a couple of things. The first one is going to be the general rule of thumb. We like to use for slides, I like to do 2 minutes per slide. That's 2 minutes talking time per slide. On the visuals, I like to use a 20 to 40 scale. And this means if I use 20 font for the text in the body, I'm going to have a 40 font point on the title. I can go 6 to 8 plus or minus in between. So for example, I can have a 48 font point on the title and still keep it on a 24 in the body. Very important. I think it's important to keep the same type of font. And I am just not a fan of anything that has a lot of serifs. I like to keep it simple. Frankly, it's everybody likes trebuchet. They think it's very familiar. Arial, sure, if you want to go with that. Be careful with Calibri, especially Calibri thin can look a little bit on the weaker side. So just go with the standard ones. I am not a fan of the templates that you get on PowerPoint, but at the end of the session, I can show you where you can find a ton of fabulous PowerPoints, slides, backgrounds that are absolutely for free, and it looks a little bit more sophisticated. So once you have this set up, how many times do you rehearse? Here's the key. The more slides, the less you do it because you have more space. The information is going to be a little bit less critical. For example, from 20 to 25 slides, you can do 3 full runs. And by that, I mean 3 full runs with no mistakes, no hiccups, and no stops. From 10 to 19 slides, I would do at least 5 to 7 full runs. Now, when it comes to 3 to 9 slides, this is where I pull all the stops. No less than 10 full runs, great full runs. I script it very tightly, and on top of that, I record myself, and I watch it, and I run it again. With that being said, how many words, how many slides? I use a 5-5-5. That means 5 words per sentence, no more. 5 sentences per block of paragraph, and no more, please, no more than 5 heavy loaded text slides, and then give 1 slide that we call a breather, or something that has a lot of text, or something that people can rest their eyes on. This is great information, but I'm going to actually share with you the secret. The secret that differentiates amazing presenters from standard ones is this. Presentations are grown-up stories. The good news for you is that I happen to know a lot about storytelling. You see, before I became an attorney, hey, wait a minute, you can still be my friend. Don't be like that. I was part of a theatrical crew that traveled locally quite extensively, and we had live presentations on a weekly basis. Later in life, I went on to do TV and, of course, live and online presentations such as this. And what I learned in all these instances was that just like stories, good presentations activate the part of the brain that turns the story into our own ideas and experiences, thanks to a process called neural coupling. It also helps the brain release dopamine, you know, the feel-good thing, and it releases it into the system, and it experiences an emotionally charged event. This makes it easier to remember, and it makes it easier to remember with greater accuracy. A good presentation / a good story can engage as many as 5 areas of the brain. Whereas when you're processing facts or reading something that has a lot of data, it's only going to activate 2 of the areas of the brain. A linear, clear, purposeful, content and visual rich presentation actually makes people want to listen to you more. When they see you next time, they want to listen to you. And unfortunately, the opposite is true. Let me give you an example of storytelling with a weekly report. Last week, we experienced a 7% decline in processing. So, after the meeting, we went with the team lead to discuss the decline. Turns out we had less people on the front lines. We sat down, we discussed, and now we have a system in place that will kick in once we hit critical staff levels to prevent this. This is what it looks like. You just read the whole report, let them read the data, and also presented what the solution is. Great graphic elements, amazing data, the latest tech, that cannot make up for the lack of the story element. Next time that you present, start designing with this in mind and see the world of a difference that it makes to connect with your audience as real people. And go ahead and feel free to thank me now. Now, besides that, is there any other tactical ways that you can use to keep your audience engaged? Of course there is. And that's what we talked about at the very, very beginning. The first one is key, and we've said it. And if you've been with me in other webinars, you know that this is me. Nothing is going to beat preparation. And when you don't prepare, it's going to show. When you do prepare, it shows in your voice, in your demeanor, in the delivery, and it's going to show in the whole package. Make sure you allot the appropriate amount of time to deliver always quality product. Prepare and produce a product that delivers what your audience needs and wants. Many presenters complain about one thing: I can't see my audience. You know what the bigger problem is? The audience can't see you. Remember, there are few things less or more important to other human beings than the human face. Human faces on your slide are going to be golden. So if you can't have your face on it, make sure that you have something human, hands, visage, something that shows them that this is about people. Of course, manage your voice. And the reason why we have to manage your voice, you guessed it, because online presentations are going to put a huge burden on voice. So any annoying traits that we have are going to become incredibly magnified. A good way for you to find out where you are is to record yourself before anything else. And let me give you an example. Any that needs to be managed right now. And then you need to also be cognizant of the ending tone of your sentences. I'm going to give you an example right now. Excuse me. An upward tone is going to be warmer, but less authoritative. For example, sure, I can take you, versus a downward ending tone. It's going to be colder, but much more stronger. Sure, I can take you. Did you see the difference? It really counts, so use it wisely. I love silence. I really, really do. Because silence gives so much power to a statement. Unfortunately, when you and I get nervous, we tend to want to fill the void. And what we do is we babble. So again, record yourself during a live online setting so you can see how you react in these circumstances and learn to be comfortable with silence. A golden rule: the more important your statement, the bigger the frame or the silence you want to give it. But be careful, don't overdo it. More than 5 seconds online is going to elicit the, are you there? And it really, really gets weird. So don't overdo it. I always believe in respect. So be respectful of yourself and of your audience. Make sure that you understand what the local rules are. It obviously makes sure that the product that you deliver is always quality. And that means that you start and you end on time. You log as early as possible to test the platform, and you start on time. If you don't do that, then people get the message that it's okay to be late, and your meeting is always going to be late. If it's a one-time meeting, do a soft opening. If you don't have enough people online, have a series of questions or food for thought, for example, in your Q&A, or even polls are always helpful. Partnering with your visuals is very key because most often people use visuals to reinforce what's on the slide. And that is an outstanding idea, with the exception that because it's not new information, our audience's brain is going to discard it as inoperant or unnecessary information. If you're talking about making a sandwich, for example, I don't want you to show me the sandwich. I want you to show me a person with a happy, satisfied face, because then I link that with how I want to be. So the key thing, the last one that we have here, is to simplify. Basically, if it doesn't have a purpose, then it doesn't need to be there. With that being said, let's go on to see what happens when we don't apply any of these. Yikes! Well, the first one is unfocused. Unfocused is, you've seen it. The presentation is all over the place. The presenter hasn't decided what type of presentation he wants to give, if it's informative, if it's instructional. And besides that, he starts talking off the cuff. He doesn't know how to keep his message in rein, and it's a really big waste of money. It's hard to see. And when we say hard to see, it's because the text or the background colors have very little context, very little contrast, or the font chosen is really, really bad. It's distracting because the visuals blend into each other, because there's too many points being made, because there's too much text, because it's hard to understand. And that bit can be just because you have too many features. For example, an excessive amount of animations. Be careful. Be very, very careful. Or simply because we have too much jargon. And the most unfortunate, unprepared. If we just fail to prepare enough, not only will it show, but it will dramatically make your presentation, the best slides that you've ever made, bomb terribly, no matter how good your material is. And that's terrible. That's very, very sad. However, what are the things that really, really work, or what should you have in your pocket? First one, once you get to the place, always test the sound and the lights. And don't just test it the day of. Test it days before. So for example, make sure that where you are doing it, test the 360 lighting if you're going to do video. Don't just do the lightings from the front. Just make sure that you do 360 all around and test your sound. Look straight into your camera, not the screen, and wear clothing that is much appropriate without stripes. Stripes are very, very distracting. I want you to avoid surprises, so make sure that the information is there, what you have said you're going to talk about is there, and avoid anecdotal reporting. We've talked about that because that really makes a presentation into a controversial one. When you consider the pace and the time of the presentation and the breaks, we just say, if you have a presentation that is going to be at 11, for example, in the morning, people might be already thinking about lunch. So make sure that you provide enough breaks. If your presentation is going to be more than 90 minutes, you need to give a break in the middle. And if you do happen to be given the challenge of doing a controversial presentation, make sure that it's heavy with data. Stay away from emotions, because when emotions start talking, then you will lose the control of the whole presentation. That's very, very, very demanding on you. Now, let me show you what the key visual elements looks like, and we're actually going to do an exercise with this. So look at this. The key elements are very simple. It's 3, and these are just 3 that we're going to play with. So anybody who's who's in design, be aware, I'm not claiming to be a designer. I'm just showing for my friends here what we can play with. So we're talking about size and scale. We want to make sure that it can be differentiated. We want to talk about emphasis, or who is driving, not 2 elements can be driving at the same time, and creating empty space, which is the equivalent of silence in speech. It allows an element to shine by itself. I'm going to give you a raw slide, and we're going to see what it looks like. So in this one, I can see, first of all, yeah, good text, great clear image. I'm a little bit concerned about that image with the microphone, that black text. Looks like a lot, and I just don't know what the key element is. Is it the picture? Is it the title? And it seems like a lot of text. So what can I do with it? Well, let's start with the title. First thing, if I remember correctly, I need to decide that it has to be in the 40 range. So I'm going to magnify this and put it at a 48. Perfect. So I take it to a 48, and I'm going to put it on the side. A good indentation is going to highlight it, and I am decided that it's going to be the secondary element. Yeah, I'm going to actually make the image to be the main driver or the focal point. Therefore, I need to tackle this heavy loaded text. Let's see, what can I do with all this imaging? Well, now that I look about it, it actually reads more like talking points. So what I can do is I'm going to edit all this information, and I'm going to use them as my talking points and use them on my notes below. Let's indent all the imaginaries information, use them as the frame inside my dominant title. And you know what? I'm going to use that image as my background. That's a great idea. Ooh, now that I remember, we talked about space. There's no space here. How can I create space when I have a black background image and I have a white background? Oh, I can do a reverse. That's what it looks like. If you can see here, we've made this the focal point, the title, but we've also made the image that clarifies we're talking about speaking, because we want the online presentations to convey the image that you will be able to speak. I've allowed for delivery to be the second, the subtitle, and obviously I created enough blank space or empty space in between the images and in between the sentences. So now that we talked a lot about all these images, wow, we've come a long way. Let's recap and see everything that we learned today. Let's see. We went from a blank page to a design slide. We went from foundational and understanding that presentations online are a completely different animal and require a different approach. Hey, we even learned that storytelling does make a difference. People will remember, will even like it when they see me. We know the steps, we know the elements, and we even got a bonus of the visual hierarchical elements to give our slides a really polished look. I really like this. And I think that the most important part of all of this is still me. Tim Duncan said it better. He said, good, better, best. Never let it rest until good is better and better is rest. Better is best. If you've seen the famous TED Talk from Dr. Jill Bolte Taylor, the one that's called Strokes of Insight, she didn't practice it twice. She didn't practice it 10 times. She practiced it 200 times. It's been viewed more than 25 million times, I think, and it's ranked as one of the most popular TED Talks of all time. And you're saying by now, okay, Elsa, but I am really not doing a TED Talk. I just want to be able to engage with my team overseas. I know. But the more you practice, the better your delivery. And it shows. It absolutely shows. Your delivery becomes natural, becomes alive. And as a consequence, even a daily report, it becomes something that your coworkers enjoy and that they even want to hear. The effort that you apply on becoming better on your online presentations is something that will never be wasted. Just like the text above, your drive, your effort that you put here in becoming a wonderful online presentation is really going to pay back. Who knows? Maybe sooner than later, you do get an email asking you to present somewhere really, really, really cool. And it will be a wonderful email to open, won't it? Just make sure that if you do get that email, please don't open it during your next online meeting. Thank you, everybody. It's always, always a pleasure to be with you. My heart sings, and I am so grateful to have shared this time with you. Michelle, Scott, anything else I can do for you?
We do have a few questions, if you don't mind answering.
Always. Anything for you guys.
Okay, let's see. Here, one says, how can you keep an eye on each other when you are lecturing online and not in person?
Perfect. So I assume, how can you keep an eye on the audience?
It says, keep an eye on each other when you are lecturing.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Sure. So that's a good one. There's several ways, and I actually have to do this a lot. I lecture in, I know that I have an audience, but I can't see them. What I do is I look straight, and I've coached myself to look straight to the camera. And I know that that is the way that they can see me as I'm looking to them. And when I get the feedback, they tell me that they feel they are looking at me back. So do never, ever, ever look at the screen. If you look at the screen, it almost looks like you're looking at people's chest. And it's really unsettling almost. So train yourself to look at the screen, if not at the camera. If not, it's always useful to have the video versions where you can have the faces on there. I love video. I have to say, I love having the faces there. Great question, by the way.
Great. Here's another one. It says, how many managing the voice is there any training or practice to minimize or remove this?
Oh, I'm sorry, to minimize the?
I guess the person's asking it to manage the voice, if there's some training. We'll see how I'm constantly saying to
Yes.
train yourself not to keep saying that.
Yes. Great question. I love that one. You know, the best trainer, shame. And that's why I'm saying it, because here's what it works. And it worked with me when I was, remember I was mentioning I was in the theater group. What they did with me, I had a very embarrassing trait that I am not going to share with you. And the way that they did it was they recorded me. They kept telling me, you need to erase this. I couldn't hear it because you get used to it. They recorded me and they played it once. You know what? It never happened again. So really record yourself, not when you know you're being recorded. Ask a couple of friends to record you. Once you hear yourself doing that, boom, you're going to become so aware of it that you will erase it. It just happens. Great question, by the way. So many people right now are writing it down.
Here's another one. It says, what can I do with a mixed audience that I do not want to bore or overwhelm?
Very good. Depends, really depends on the subject. I love to have a lot of information about who am I talking to. That's why we love to have the infographics, you know, what's the context. We talked about it a little bit. What is the context of the meeting? So if I know why are they there, who is in the audience, what are their needs, and not the wants. We know what people want, but we don't know what they really need. If I can satisfy their need, their want is going to be taken care of. So go and find out who is going to be there. And from there, you can design something that hits most people. If need be, tackle the learning styles. If you can tackle the learning styles, people stay engaged. That's pretty much like the basics of it.
Great. Here's another. Is it better to do with slides and have the camera on so the audience can see your face, or camera off so they can focus on the content?
Great question. It actually depends. If it is if the content is, okay, let me back up. If it's in academic settings, for example, I prefer, and I know my audience and I see them every week, I want to have my face on there because I want to have a human connection. They're my students, for example. I want them to see me and I want to see them because that way I can gauge by their face, by their expression, when something didn't click or when they're confused about something. When it's a big group, like 200 plus, there's obviously no way that you can have that. So you don't need it because the opposite would also happen. You can be very discouraged by the faces of people just not agreeing with your content. If it's a very controversial element and you know you're firm in what you believe, do not have the camera on because you will be swayed. So it really depends on what you want it to be. I love it to always have the video on, but between you and me and us chickens, I am an extremely vain person, so I love to see myself on the camera. But I do think there's a connection. I love having the connection with my people. I love it.
Grant wanted to find out who was the TED Talk, the 20 million views presentation. Who was the person's name?
The insights, hang on, let me put it up here in the box. Hang on. Jill Ray Botham. And I can do better. Let me put the, let me see. I'm going to try to be, Michelle, if we can go to the next question, because I'm going to try to put the,
sure,
the link there. I'm
sure.
trying to check it here.
See, Randall says that you mentioned that there's a way to get free professional slide templates or background. Yes. Where would we be able to find that?
Yes. So, and this is something of the things, connect with me on LinkedIn. I have, by the way, while I'm doing this, I absolutely want to thank my support team. Mike is driving the Q&A. Mike, if you wouldn't mind, if you can put our LinkedIn handles so that they can connect with us. We actually have a sheet that if you email or connect us on LinkedIn, we can send it to you. It's like a cheat sheet that has not only where you can get some of those backgrounds, but also where you can get really free images. All these images that I have here, they're free. Absolutely free. Copyright free. And once you learn how to play with them, it really makes your images look great. And you don't have to just keep them for presentations that are outside of work. I use them not only because this is my work, but also when I want to do something a little bit more impressive, even when I'm with my friends. It really makes a good use of it. Mike, I am posting here the name of Dr. Jill Bolte Taylor. It's just that sometimes people do not get her last name right, and I don't want them to miss it. So I just sent Mike her name for you to see her TED Talk. It's phenomenal. It is absolutely phenomenal.
Perfect. Something I also wanted to find out, do you have any published materials that they can continue to learn based on your awesome lecture?
Yes, I actually do. Mike has been doing a great work with some of our friends. We are actually collecting. This is crazy, Michelle. We just did a kind of an analysis. We've been doing this since 1996. So collecting the material, from back then. Everybody's going to gasp, but there was not internet back then. So we're just collecting a lot of paper and putting it together. And what's really exciting is we're collecting from different generations, from Generation X's to Generation Y and then Generation Z. And how does it work? And we're just very interested into a very, very virtual world when you don't have very virtual generations. How do you make it work? And it's exciting. So yeah, be on the lookout. Again, check on with us on the M&E group page on the Facebook page, because we're going to have that out this year. It's a lot of fun, a lot of fun, because it's, it's a lot of years of material.
Great. Thank you, Elsa. That's all the questions that we're able to answer today, but I just want to say thank you very much for this informative presentation, and I also wanted to thank everyone for attending. I also wanted to mention that our next Build Your Career webinar series will be held on 10 September at 11 Eastern Time on What's the Story? Influence Through Storytelling by Roger Granis, Principal of Granis Group. Our next Distinguished Lecture Series will be held on October 8th at 9 a.m. Eastern on the Rise of the Quantum Internet by Marcello Califi and Angela Sarah, I'm going to butcher the last name, Capolti, Assistant Professor at the University of Naples, Federico. Registrations for these upcoming events are now open. We will be sending you the link to these future events along with the slides and recording of this webinar. Thank you again, everyone, and have a safe and wonderful day.